Hello and welcome to Drunk on Tea. Warhammer 40,000 is in a bit of a sorry state, and today I'm going to discuss some ideas to help fix it, and help make the game a much more enjoyable experience once again. As much as we would love for lower prices, we know that's not an option. Shareholders want their year-on-year profit increases, so unfortunately a price drop is off the table. But there are ways Games Workshop can fix this without changing their business model. These are what I'm going to be looking at today. If you want a deep dive into late-stage capitalism and how it affects the landscape of tabletop gaming, let me know in the comments and I can make one explaining how a change in business model could lead to even greater profits, but also the pitfalls of that change against the corporate interests of publicly listed companies. But for now, let's look at some changes that could help make 40k a much more enjoyable experience without rebuilding it from the ground up. Slow down the edition cycle. The ever-increasing rate of releases of new editions is so tiring for everyone. People have just learned how to play a game and master the rules of their armies, and a new edition drops and the cycle starts all over again. There are always some armies who just get their codex and then a month or two later is completely useless as the new edition has changed everything. The release cycle changed from 3 years to 6 years. It would give everyone more time with the edition, time with their armies, and give the writers a longer window to make the new editions so the game is more polished and ultimately better to play. I know that Games Workshop makes a huge amount of money when a new edition is released. It brings people back into the game, new players are tempted to play, and pretty much everyone will buy the new box. GW will never be willing to give up on this cash cow, but there is a way to keep the hype without a new edition. After the 3-year window, and once the last codex has dropped, they can release a new starter set, new plastic for everyone, change the setting like they would for a new edition, but keep the old rules in place. They could even print a new version of the rulebook with all the FAQs and change rules in the book. GW did this with the last edition of Middle-earth strategy battle game. The Battle for Osgiliath box didn't change anything, all the army books and supplements were still valid, but out came a new starter set with new models, the updated rulebook so you didn't need copies of the FAQ printed out, and it sold really well. People will buy a mid-edition start set for 40k, a box of new plastic always sells really well. Games Workshop get to keep their hype, sales, and customers that a new edition will bring in, but without the sour taste in everyone's mouth that comes with having to learn a new edition of the game. By having an edition length that is much longer, Games Workshop can release additional codexes or supplemental codex books for the armies as they release new minis as well, so the release cycle can continue, but without the feeling in the community that the inevitable edition reboot is just around the corner. A return to narrative focus. This one may be slightly controversial, but it seems like a lot of the focus on 40k has been about the competitive scene. While I understand that a lot of competitive players spend a lot of money chasing the meta, it seems like the more casual players have been left behind, but there is a way to please both groups. The Crusade elements were supposed to be the bone toss to narrative players, but it kind of misses the mark. By releasing some narrative supplements that tell the stories of particular campaigns, it would allow non-competitive players to have missions to play out which are focused on fun and storytelling, rather than just focused on balance. Middle-earth had a whole load of these books last edition, and it is expected it will continue this edition. These are great at telling you the storyline of particular events, and the missions to play to recreate them. The missions come with a list of models that you need to play them out, as well as the special rules and objectives for each side. The missions aren't balanced at all, often one side is set up to win, but with both sides trying to achieve different goals, it creates a really interesting game and fantastic storytelling opportunities. There are so many stories that could be told this way in the 40k universe, from the fall of Cadia to the Plague Wars, the Battle for Armageddon. The list is pretty much endless. These supplements could be about both famous events in the past, as well as being used to push the storyline and setting forwards. If the new edition box with Space Marines and Orcs, alongside the box could be a book telling the story of a grueling and seemingly never-ending series of battles, which players could then play out to see if they can change the ultimate fate of the galaxy. Let me know if there are any famous battles from 40k that you think would make a great campaign book. I think this would work really well alongside the idea of a slower edition cycle, allowing for more growth to the game to be delivered by heavily narrative-focused campaign books. Of course, these books could contain new units as they are released, as a way to introduce more models without the need for a new codex, alongside new special rules based around the campaigns. But they should always be narrative focused. Balance isn't the priority. You can still enjoy a game when it's likely you will lose, especially if the goal for you isn't to win, but to destroy an important unit or objective, while the much more powerful side is trying to save the objective and drive you back. After the business model change, now let's look at a couple of things that would just be fun additions. If you enjoyed the video, please press like. If you want more videos, press the subscribe button and ring the notification bell. If you would like to support the channel and become a member, please press the join button down below. Traitor Guard. I can't understand how the Traitor Guard still aren't an army in 40k. Lore-wise, every Chaos attack starts with the local Imperial Guard turning traitor. There are already models made for games like Blackstone Fortress and used in the Space Marine Adventures board game. It will be so much fun to play with an army of Imperial Guard that have turned traitor. Most of the models in the current Imperial Guard range would still be perfectly valid, just an upgrade sprue here and there containing some chaos-looking gubbins to add to tanks. Pretty much all that GW would have to do is release a codex, a few extra kits to add some variety, and a couple of upgrade sprues, and the army is good to go right out the gate. I'm sure people would love to play as the Guard who have fallen to chaos. It would add some extra narrative elements for games where you end up with Astra Militarum versus either Astra Militarum or another force from the Imperium. It would be great to be able to make the Guard army traitor and have some unique army bonuses to play with. There are great ways to introduce them alongside a new narrative supplement, a campaign book based around the Gaunt's Ghosts, so the Tanith first and only against the Blood Pack. It would launch the army alongside some backstory and games to play to really get to know the new Traitor Guard on the tabletop. Now for my final way to improve 40k. This one is maybe a bit more left field, but I've heard people talk about it, and it would be a great addition that would sell like crazy if it was announced, and the amount of buzz it would generate would be insane. Some sci-fi Ratmen would be a huge change to 40k. We've just had the Squats, or Leagues of Voltan, come back, but the release seemed to fall a little bit flat compared to the hype that was around before it. But I think the Skaven coming in as a brand new army that's never been seen in 40k before would be great. We could have some of the silliness that Skaven are famous for, and has been slowly removed from the Orcs, come back. In the crazy world of 40k, which does have Beastmen in Blackstone Fortress, the Skaven aren't too ridiculous. Having them as an army that is exploring the galaxy in search of Warpstone, which they use to power their ships, is pretty much all the justification that is needed for them to come into conflict with the other races. I imagine them as a horde army, having lots and lots of troops who aren't great on their own, low ballistic skill, low defense, and low strength, but as an army works by slowly grinding down their opponents. Of course, there aren't any existing models, they would need to be designed from scratch, but some sci-fi Skaven with some crazy weapons would be a great addition to 40k. I imagine them being a bit like the Imperial Guard crossed with Orcs, having lots of basic troops forming the main bulk of an army, but supported by some very powerful, if a bit unreliable, artillery, and some ramshackle tanks that could be a bit of a glass cannon, high hitting power, but also not the most resilient of armoured vehicles in the game. It would be great to hear how you think the army should play. Introducing a brand new army to the game is a big change, but it fits with the Games Workshop IP, keeps the connections between the fantasy games and the sci-fi games, and it could even be the change, or be interesting enough to bring back some of the older gamers, while enticing new players to the game. So those are some of my ideas to try and bring 40k back into being the kind of game that was loved just a few years ago. I have more ideas, mostly based around rules tweaks and ways to make the actual tabletop experience better, so let me know if you'd like a part 2, and also let me know any ideas you have in the comments. So thank you very much for listening to me ramble on. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. And as always, an extra special thank you to our Tea Lover channel member Jenkins. Your support helps keep the lights on and get the models to help keep making these videos.